Howdy y'all.
Today, we're going to be discussing each class in detail. And by detail, I mean everything you'd want to know, from leveling to endgame role and viability. Anyway, let's get to it.
Now you may have seen the RPG style stat bars on the Wynncraft website that show the 4 different stats: damage, defense, range, and spells. While these look flashy and cool, they don't clearly represent gameplay and are often misleading. A class's item pool, one's build, and a class's unique spells matter far more than the stats on the bar.
Quick disclaimer. Hunter, Knight, Dark Wizard, Ninja, and Skyseer are actually just cosmetic reskins. No pay-to-win classes, thankfully. The most obvious difference in Archer compared to other classes is that its spell inputs are swapped. Instead of left-clicking to melee, you right-click. Instead of right-left-left, for instance, you left-right-right. But it's not really a problem in practice. Archer is the second most glassy class due to taking 40% extra damage due to its low base defense. However, if you play this class, you will likely not feel the fragility at all. The biggest part of its toolkit is range. As an archer, you can easily stay out of a mob's effective range with your super long range arrow storms, bombs, and melees. This means that you won't get hit nearly as much as other classes, and thus can easily survive on the low base defense Archer has. Moreover, having arrow shield means that melee mobs will simply get repelled when they get too close, and the constant speed 3 from escape means that mobs will have a hard time catching you regardless. Archers can even use arrow storm to pin down mobs against walls, neutering mobs that can't use spells to get away, and potentially interrupting those that do. We would also be remiss to discuss Archer without explaining how good its melee is. You can snipe bosses from 20-30 blocks or more without spending a drop of mana. Archer gets more powder special activations than any other class, as it still shoots an arrow when activating its powder special, which uniquely activate where the arrow lands. This also means that players can proc lifesteal and mana steal from quite a distance, without the danger of getting close to mobs. It's important to note that this does come at the cost of its melee mostly only being capable of hitting one mob, or mobs clumped very close together. Another main selling point when it comes to Archer is the Major ID Hawkeye. You can get this at level 45 by using the bow Deadeye, and at level 94 with the helmet Nighthawk. This Major ID turns the 3 streams of Arrowstorm into a single stream of 5 arrows, and makes it deal 2/3 of the total damage. This Major ID allows Archer to stay even farther back, improving survivability while making the entire Arrowstorm very easy to hit. The trade-off is Nighthawk taking up a helmet slot, but the stats on the item aren't bad at all. Archer is a very easy class to level thanks to its range, damage, and ability to simply not get hit. That trend continues into the endgame. The class can seem glassy due to its base defense, leading to it getting one-shotted sometimes, but this can be greatly mitigated by using a tankier build. Speccing into tankier builds isn't even punished that much on Archer due to its massive damage output, so it can easily build 3 times as tanky as normal, and still outdamage other classes. Archer is invaluable as a DPS in all endgame content, whether it be solo or group, like in raids. An important question is also how it fares with crowd control immunity, henceforth referred to as CCI. CCI makes mobs immune to most forms of knockback and, well, crowd control. This is important because lots of endgame mobs and bosses have this immunity, and many classes are very crowd control heavy. However, this does not mean much for Archer, except that Arrow Shield does not knock back enemies. Archer can still arrow lock CCI mobs with its Arrow Storm, and can run circles around enemies to not take damage. Heck, Arrow Shield even becomes a damage option, since all 3 charges trigger immediately from the touch of a CCI foe.
Next up is the class that was widely considered the worst class in 1.19, but has much more appeal in 1.20. Warrior suffers from 2 major problems: the high knockback of its spells and its short melee range. Warrior's staple spells, Uppercut and Bash, both have significant knockback. Uppercut with vertical knockback, and Bash with horizontal knockback. These effects can make it hard to deal constant damage to mobs, and it makes it very hard to melee your foes. However, there are ways to deal with this problem. It isn't always negative, for instance. Sometimes you can use the knockback for crowd control, keeping hard-hitting mobs off of your allies. Shift plus Uppercut, or upper flying, can also be used to avoid damage. Importantly, Warrior has access to attacks upper canceling. You can cancel the vertical knockback of Uppercut by bashing or meleeing about 0.5 seconds after casting the Uppercut spell. This will root mobs to the spot and deal all Uppercut damage at once, along with allowing you to keep up constant damage or get in more reliable melees. If you want a more comprehensive guide on this, check out my video on upper canceling, linked in the description. Warrior's other problems: its abysmal melee range, is not as easily handled. Warrior as a class is mainly built around knockback spells, leaving it very few options to deal with being in close combat with mobs. This means that warriors have to basically face tank bosses/mobs if they want to take advantage of being able to melee. It is especially difficult since warriors' weapons usually focus on lifesteal or mana steal, making weaving in melees critical. This, along with the knockback problem, also makes warrior a bit grueling to level. It is less of a problem as a warrior nears endgame, though. Though this may sound dismal, warrior has many positive aspects, the crown jewel among them being its incredibly high base defense. It's a 20% damage reduction or a 36% damage reduction with War Scream. Warriors end up having almost double the effective hit points of other classes. This means that they can somewhat survive being up close and personal, and makes warriors great for hard content, because you don't have to worry as much about being one-shotted. If there's a Shaman or Mage healing to back you up, you can face take almost anything. Warrior also has access to the Rally Mage on the Infernal Impulse leggings and the Rhythm of the Seasoned Spear. This major ID effectively nullifies charge damage and exchanges it for a heal that even works on allies. As with all healing spells in Wynncraft, this is affected by water damage percent as well as maximum health. This also helps make up for warriors lacking toolkit for close range interactions. Its movement spell Charge is also great for dodging and for controlling where the player wants to be, even on its own. Warrior also has exclusive access, outside of rage buffs, to many major IDs associated with tanking. They have the Taunt major ID that can take aggro, and two others which are locked behind mythics. Guardian redirects half of allies' damage taken to the wielder, and Hero has Savior Sacrifice, which boosts the damage and damage reduction of the user and allies as long as the player is below a certain health threshold. As a cherry on top, Warrior actually fares very well against enemies with CCI. This immunity means warriors do not have to upper cancel to keep up constant damage, and can even cycle upper bash. This also allows Warrior to deal a heck of a lot more damage to CCI enemies. Overall, Warrior is a solid class. It has imperfections, but it's definitely worth playing, and is unmatched as a face tank in groups. Now for Mage. This is the class everyone and their dog will recommend to a new player, and for good reason. Mage's main draw is its heal spell. No more worrying about health potions. You take a hit, heal. A friend of yours about to die, heal. Wading through a literal flood of enemies? Heal. Seriously, heal's power is not to be overstated. This ability basically allows Mage to be a superior tank and support to a warrior in many cases, though it lacks some of Warrior's utility, and its lower base defense does not allow it to take as many consecutive big hits. At endgame, it turns Mage into an instant mainstay in raids and a solid solo class. A small concern is that Mage's lower base defense leaves it mildly susceptible to being bursted down quickly, but even then, with cautious play or tanky builds, this shouldn't be a problem. Mage's toolkit is likewise perfect for an all-rounder. Its melee goes far in a straight line and pierces enemies, and the undisputed best melee in properties alone. It also has access to Ice Snake, which is great for crowd control and spell cycle. And Mage's movement spell, Teleport, is fantastic, allowing for great traveling and escape options. With enough mana and low spell costs, even flying indefinitely is both possible and practical with Teleport. The only real complaint with Mage is that its relative DPS falls a bit short. The meteor spell is limited by the fact that only one meteor can be falling at a time, which leads players to sometimes find the Mage playstyle boring due to its spell cycle being limited by meteor fall time, and how generally unkillable Mage is. However, that just means that Mage is regarded as a chill class to play, so not even a real downside. I also personally find Hybrid Mage to be very fun, and Fast Melee Mage is very cool thanks to how nice its melee is. Now for how Mage fares against CCI enemies. Not much changes for Mage except that Ice Snake and Teleport are no longer sources of crowd control. This means Mage is more vulnerable to CCI mobs and can lead to the frustration of more meteors missing. For leveling, Mage lacks a damage spell until it gets access to Meteor at level 21. After that, it feels clunky until Meteor gets a fall speed upgrade at 36, which makes gameplay much nicer. But the existence of Heal spell makes it a very comfortable class to play, freeing you from dependence on potions. Overall, Mage is a well-rounded class that provides invaluable healing, both to itself and potential allies.
it's time to talk about the class that represents both the skill expression of no-hit challenges and the powerful accessibility of heavy melee, Assassin. This class is a close quarters combat class known to reward skill, thanks to the spammability and synergy of its spells. Like Warrior, Assassin has a short melee range, but unlike Warrior, Assassin has a toolkit that works together to decimate at close range. Namely, Assassin has Spin Attack and Vanish. The Vanish spell is widely regarded as the most powerful spell in the game. It sends you in a direction you're looking, making it very nice for getting around and over things. But that's not, the real reason it's considered the most powerful. It gives you 4 buffs: Invisibility, when you unlock it, some resistance and damage boost, at grade 2, and speed 5, at grade 3. The damage boost is a whopping 80% multiplicative, and even lasts 2 more seconds after exiting Vanish. Assassin's entire gameplay revolves around exploiting this damage boost as much as possible. Assassin's main damaging spell, or rather the most used spell for any spell Assassin player, is Spin Attack. It's an instant spell, completing its damage right after casting. Spin acts in a circle around you, and at grade 2, blinds any mob hit by it for a second, which honestly feels like overkill. Using it alongside Vanish lets you pump out absurd amounts of damage while staying safe with a combination of your invisibility and your target's blindness. If Spin Attack and Vanish are the bread and butter of Assassin, Multi-Hit and Smoke Bomb are the icing on the cake. Assassin's third spell, Multi-Hit, keeps mobs locked up during its multiple hits. Keep in mind that it has a much longer duration than Spin. Its grade 3 upgrade lets you control its knockback, allowing you to fling enemies away, including for getaway purposes. The knockback isn't the greatest when comboing mobs, however, and as such it can be cancelled by holding shift or controlled by looking straight down. While the vertical knockback can seem too much, the surprisingly high vertical hitboxes of Spin Attack and Smoke Bomb alleviate the potential issue. The last spell, Smoke Bomb, throws a projectile that explodes into a 5-second cloud of damage that ticks every half second. It can be used from range to snipe enemies and up close to enhance spell combos, giving Assassin more coverage and additional damage per second. It gains a slow effect for additional utility at grade 2 and throws 3 clouds at grade 3. Assassin also has an endgame Mage ID called Cherry Bombs, given by the Conspirator's Trick Pocket's leggings or the Blossom Haze dagger. This Mage ID turns smoke bombs into instant damage projectiles, balanced out by lowering the total damage, offering a unique modification to Assassin gameplay. Also, as mentioned, Assassin is the poster child for heavy melee, thanks to Vanish. It drastically improves the damage of the already powerful Quake Powder special, as well as the strong single hits of heavy melee builds. The playstyle is a sharp contrast to Spell Spam Assassin, being very accessible and easy on the fingers. As far as CCI is concerned, a noticeable detriment is Spin Attack no longer blinding enemies, but Vanish still exists, and Assassin can still do Assassin things, so it really doesn't matter. Overall, even though Assassin has to go in deep, its fantastic kit makes doing so both safe and very rewarding. It excels in solo play, and is no slouch as a group damage dealer. Now for the newest class, Shaman. Unlike other classes, Shaman spells all work with its first spell, the Totem, and the playstyle takes a bit to get used to. However, once learned, it flows quite well and is definitely rewarding. Let's start off with some of the imperfections of Shaman. The biggest of these is Shaman's incredibly low base defense, taking 50% more damage from attacks. This leaves Shaman very vulnerable to being bursted and taking critical amounts of damage. As always, defensive woes can be somewhat mitigated by using tanky builds or with good play. Another flaw is its melee attack. While piercing an extremely long range, its spread forces the player to be closer to the target if they want full damage, and its range is additionally hindered by each melee cancelling the last. Each beam only does 33%, totaling to 99% of the weapon's damage. Not even 100%. The range isn't the only problem, as Mana Steal and Life Steal also have reduced chances on each beam. It's not only issues though, Shaman has some great strengths. Firstly, the constant healing of its totem starting at level 16, in a game where any healing is greatly appreciated, especially while leveling. Not only that, the totem also provides a damage boost for the Shaman and allies, allowing Shaman to be a great support class. Shaman thrives by controlling the battlefield and keeping mobs grouped up to be mowed down, and it does it absurdly well. Aura sucks mobs in and shreds them, while the wide radius of the totem can cover some rooms completely. Unfortunately, Shaman's reliance on crowd control is not as useful at endgame due to CCI mobs cropping up more frequently. This drastically reduces Shaman's usefulness and makes it struggle much harder in endgame content. It can still manage, but it loses its most potent weapon of crowd control, leading to many exaggerated negative opinions about the class. Shaman is a great support and the undisputed best at grinding mobs, making it extremely good for leveling, but can fall short in endgame because of CCI directly hitting its niche.
As always, keep in mind that no class is even close to unplayable, and that the class that you have the most fun on is probably the best one for you. At the end of the day, we're just here to help you make an informed decision.